Okay, welcome to another video. So this is DET plus the Tuft of Flowers discovery aspects, and there's two aims for this video. Number one is we're going to learn how to organize information about a text using a study table, and two, we're going to outline how the Tuft of Flowers connects to the aspect of discovery. Now let's focus on the first one, which is this DET table. You would have been emailed a discovery evidence table a little while ago. We've looked at it in class already. But the aim of this table is that it's supposed to be regularly updated by you. I've done the first poem and I'm going to show you that today. But the purpose of this is that as we go through each of the poems, you'll be collecting your own notes so that you can study and remember your learning next year when you do FROS for the HSC. And hopefully it'll be a useful resource to you. Now I'm just going to go through each of the elements and talk through what you need to do in all of them so that you know what you're doing. So number one, we've got the text title. So here obviously you've got the name of the text, and if you scroll down to the bottom you'll see that there are 3 spaces that have been left blank. These are for your related texts. So as you study discovery and you complete your assessment task as well, you should be adding in a few related texts that you can use in your section 3 of the examination. 2, we've got a summary of the poem or the text, and here in your own words you just need to write a recount or summary about what's happening in the text, and you should be focusing on just the literal meaning of the text. And all of these we'll be covering in class, but you need to create your own summary of the text. 3, we've got the discovery aspects explored in the text. So after you understand the literal meaning of the poem, you should think about how the poem connects to some of the green sheet rubrics that we've been talking about in class, and then provide a brief description about how the poem achieves these aspects. And obviously the more detailed you are, the more useful your notes will be. Next, we've got the impetus, process, and ramification of the text. So in your own words, very briefly, you should outline the impetus of the discovery or discoveries in the text, the process, and the ramifications. I recommend that you keep this short because the detail should come in the previous section when you're talking about the aspects, but it should just be a reminder to you. The next part, and this is where it gets really important, is the evidence from the text. So you're going to try and select some good evidence, not just a random selection, but some good considered evidence to support your impetus, your processes, and your ramification in the text that you're talking about. And you can see here for Tuft of Flowers, I've included a couplet or multiple couplets to support each of the impetus, process, or ramifications I've identified. And just a reminder that this will be extremely useful for the essay task. The final one, which is where you're going to go from a C range essay to a B and A range essay, is where you start to talk about how the text actually explores discovery through language, forms, and features. And you can see that with the evidence that I've got on the 4th column, or the second last column, I've outlined the major techniques that have been used in that evidence, and I've provided a brief explanation of effect. And these explanations of effect are really important, and you should actually be able to insert a lot of what you say into your essay, but obviously the way that you word it and the emphasis that you have will change, and the evidence that you use will change depending on the essay question. Alrighty, so that's what's the table. Now what do you need to do? And there's basically 2 points. Number 1, you need to fill it, and number 2, you need to revise it. So I said this earlier, after we go through the poems in class, fill in the sections as soon as possible while it's fresh, and then revise this as we go through the year, looking back at it every few weeks or so in your regular study patterns, and then coming up to trial and HSC examinations. Obviously you can do a little bit more with the table, but as long as you're keeping it fresh and you're keeping FROST in your mind, then that would be awesome. So So that's a little bit about how I want you to use this DET table, the DET table. Now let's talk about the Tuft of Flowers. And I want to go through actually how I've used the table to collect my evidence about the discovery aspects. Now I'm going to be focusing on one aspect that is found in the text, and you guys can go through and read the rest. But I kind of want to make this practical about how you can use the table, but also learn something about Frost's poem. So one aspect that I've found is that discovery in the Tuft of Flowers leads to new understandings and perceptions about two things. One, human relationships and how important they are. And two, a connection to nature. You can see that I've written down here, as a result of the discovery, the grass turner is more aware of his connection to his colleague, the mower, and nature through the butterfly and the tuft of flowers. The suggestion that we are alone in life, either lonely or self-sufficient and solitary, alludes to our vulnerability and the realization that through nature we become connected to something much larger and more profound. That is a comforting and reassuring discovery. Now, obviously the whole poem sets up these aspects, but for the sake of this video, keeping it short, I just want to focus on the ramification evidence that I've included. Now, I've said that one ramification of this discovery is that the persona is now much more aware of nature. And I've used the following evidence from the poem to support that idea. I've said that the persona says in the second half of the poem, or in the last half of the poem, that made me hear the wakening birds around, and hear his long scythe whispering to the ground, and feel a spirit kindred to my own, so that henceforth I worked no longer alone. Alright, now on this final part of the table, I've identified a few critical language techniques that are used to make me aware that the discovery has led to a change in understanding about nature for the persona. I've identified that auditory and kinesthetic imagery has been used to show the persona's awareness of the birds around him and his kindred connection to his colleagues. And I can also say that this discovery has left a positive impact. You see, with the high modal statement of henceforth I worked no more alone, confirming his newfound connection to humankind. He acknowledges his connection to the mower, and it is a ramification of the previous discoveries that have been discussed earlier on in my table. So, I'm hoping that you can see how this DET table helps you take your understanding of the poem and match it to some evidence and techniques that have been identified, just to ensure that you're connecting your understanding of the poem to the concept of discovery. And I really hope that this video has made you see the value of keeping this table up to date, and I'll be able to have a look at this table as well as you go, because I've all got access through Google Docs to each and every single one of your tables. So keep it up to date and feel free to ask any questions.